Today we have Ed Rodriguez with us. He's presently working on a new game called Animus. So Ed, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
So I heard the name Animus, and I didn't really know what that word meant. I mean, I know animosity to mean some sort of kind of hostility, ill feeling. So I'm curious about what was your reasoning behind making the name Animus, and what does that mean towards the game?
Well, it was kind of a long road. First of all, the whole game has been a long road in development. It's been in development. I don't want to say development, but the idea of it has been around for about 20 years of my lifetime. And originally, when I was coming up with the initial concept of the game, the artwork that I was using at the time was sort of placeholder artwork, but it was an anime style artwork. And I wanted it to, that's what I wanted to go with the game. I wanted to be an anime art when it, and I kept looking for a title that used anime in it, and that's I just happened to find Animus, and then Animus has many different meanings, but I like the one you said, and I think it's actually a legal term. Animus is what is the intent? The intent to do something, and I think it's actually a Latin term, and in legal circles, there's usually like another Latin word that proceed that follows it. So like for instance, I think animus nocendi is a legal term basically saying the intent to cause harm or intent to do something that's not good. And I like that, although that was kind of too long, so I just used the word animus, and it kind of had that anime, like the letters from anime. um and then I ended up not doing that art style. It's just how it went, but the name kind of stuck, and I like that because so to have ill intent, it's a head-to-head competitive game at its heart, although there are some cooperative modes. But I think that kind of surmised the game in an interesting way that you know right from the get-go, this is a competitive game. It's a game about going against the other players.
Very cool. It definitely makes a lot of sense. So yeah, with that, I'm curious, how does the game play?
All right, it's one of the things that I wanted to do, and I knew that I needed to do early on, was as creating a card game. It needs to differentiate itself from other games out there. So there's the big games, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Hearthstone, all games that I'm a big fan of, and I wanted to do something that was along those lines, but not exactly so. So what is Animus? Animus is what I call a draft building card game. Whereas most card games, you're gonna buy a bunch of cards, and you're gonna make a pre-built deck, and you're gonna build a deck and then play against the other players. That's not what happens here. In this game, it's just one box that has all the cards, and has enough cards for up to 4 players to play. And then what's going to happen is, before the players even start playing, they're going to create a pool of cards that's not going to use all of them. And you're going to draft one by one the cards that are in there. And once you've drafted those cards for your deck, and your deck only consists of 9 cards. So it's a small game. The draft is really fast. And then you're gonna, with your little 9-card deck, you're gonna battle the other players. You also have like these large I call them entity cards, but like if you've ever played Magic Commander, they're like that. They're just these big cards. It's a character, represents you as the player, and it gives you some kind of special power that the other player doesn't have. On top of which, one of the other unique things of the game is that every single card in the game is a unique card. There's no duplicates. So you ever play like Magic? There's like you can have 4 lightning bolts in your deck. That's not here. In here, every single card is a unique character, and their ability is something unique to them that's not repeated on any other card. So if you have a card that says, "Hey, when you play this card, it deals a damage," that's the only card in the entire game that does that and will ever do that. Other
Nice.
cards may do something similar, but it'll have some kind of wrinkle or whatever to it. So essentially, is that it's a draft building game where you're gonna draft a bunch of cards from a pool of cards, and then you're gonna battle the other players with it. Again, the interesting thing about it is that there's only one type of card in the game. It's character cards. So it's really easy to learn and get into. And you're just literally just going to be playing your cards. You have this interesting field. So you have to choose whether your characters are up front in like melee or in a middle flank position or back in support, just helping the others. That part was inspired by like the Pokemon video games a little bit. I like the idea that you have a card that's out fighting, but then you can switch in and out. So there's a little bit of that. And then and again, learning, not learning, but discovering different combos, because again, every single card in the game is unique and does something different. So you often stumble upon just interesting combos like, oh, this card does this when I play it, and then if I happen to play this other one, oh, now it just got even better. But it's all like very much on the fly kind of discovery.
Nice. That's pretty cool. I mean, you mentioned games like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic. Who would you say is the target audience for your game?
Well, definitely people that like those games. So what I wanted to do, and I think I touched on this a little bit, is I wanted to make a game that appealed to, again, I'm a fan of all those card games, and I wanted to make a game that I enjoyed, right? And talking to people, and just from my own experience, I found like three major complaints about those games, even though people love them, like, right? So I love Magic, and I play Magic Arena and all that, but one of my biggest complaints is cost. You got to keep buying boosters and all that, and it's addicting. I mean, it's fun, but it's addicting, and you're spending a bunch of money buying all these cards. And the second thing is the amount of time you got to spend once you have those cards. You got to build the deck, and if you want to play seriously competitively, you got to fine tune those decks and play it. So there's a financial constraint and a time commitment to it. In addition to, if I buy a bunch of cards and I have a good deck and I want to play with my friend, well, he also needed to do all that. He needed to spend a bunch of money, and he needed to, I know you can lend people cards, but overall, every player has to like spend a bunch of money and spend a bunch of time building decks and all that. So I wanted to sort of solve that problem there, and so I made a game that's just all comes in one box, and there will be more stuff that you can buy later. But from the get-go, I always knew that I wanted everything to be in one box, and then each set that comes out later is going to be a full-fledged game right in its own box. So if you don't want this one, you can just buy this one and you're good to go. And it's not just enough for you to play. In that box is everything for you and your friends to play. All right. But also you can combine them all. You can take the different sets and combine them all. And it leads to a little bit of chaos, but it just keeps the game fresh every single time you play. And again, so you're getting rid of that financial commitment because you're just buying whatever sets you want. You can buy them all, you can buy just one, whatever. And then there's the time commitment. Well, you don't have to spend time building this game, building anything, because you're going to draft your cards every time you play. And it's a very quick draft. So you just lay out the cards, draft quickly, you got your deck, and you're good to go. And you still get the feeling of all those card games. You got a nice, cool deck. You got, cards that do interesting stuff. You got card battling, all that stuff. And you finish playing, throw it all in one box, and you're done.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool to hear, because, I mean, me and my friends, we love playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, we love the aspects of, one, deck building, and two, love the aspect of the competitive nature of, oh, it's, you versus me. One of us is going to win, right? And there's lots of replay value in that kind of game as well. But as you mentioned, like, there's a lot of difficulties in, staying up to date with that kind of game, because there's always new cards coming out. There's always, more busted cards that just make your cards obsolete, right? So it's kind of like repetitive of having to keep on buying and blowing money, and then also the aspect of keep on learning how to play the new cards. That can be sometimes, very difficult, if not impossible, if you have like a full-time job that you're trying to keep up with too, right? So it's difficult to play those kinds of games because you have to keep on learning new things, keep on paying more money. But it sounds like your game is different in that sense, that you can just play it from the get-go. There's not the aspect of having to like learn new cards each time. So that's great to hear. That's pretty cool.
Well, and it also solves another problem that you just kind of touched on is very often a new set will come out, right? And it'll have like a couple like super powerful cards, and you're either playing with those cards if you want to win, or you gotta design your deck to deal with those cards. My game gets around that because yes, there are some cards that are like very powerful, but you are not guaranteed to get them in your deck because it's a draft. And because of the limited nature of the draft, either one, it might not even show up in that current draft for that particular game, so you can't count on it being there. And or if it does show up on there, your opponent may draft it before you do, so there's a little bit of a tension there. So you'll never really have one player always dominating because they have the best card, you know. And there's a trade-off. The player may have done everything they could to draft that one powerful card, but maybe they left themselves open for you to draft a bunch of maybe not as powerful, but a bunch of still very good synergistic cards. So that's the great thing about drafting that I love. It mitigates a lot of power creep issues that many games have.
Yeah, I guess my next question is in regards to draft building. Like there are other games that you can draft build and do that kind of gameplay. I was curious if any of those games inspired you towards your this game.
Yeah, well, one of the most interesting things and one of the biggest lessons that I can tell to other game designers is play other games. Play other games. Don't just stay focused on your own game. And I'll tell you exactly why. So early on, I always knew that it was going to be a drafting game. And one of the biggest problems that I had initially was the actual draft itself. Initially, what we did as the draft was you dealt out 9 cards to each player, and then you picked one card and passed the others to the other player, and you kept going until you had your 9 specific cards. The problem, and that functions, right? It sounds easy to explain. I draft one, give you the rest, and we keep going until we got the 9 that we want. The problem with that was there was a lot of analysis paralysis. So especially newer players, which I wanted to cater to not just hardcore card games, but I wanted to appeal to people that are new to these kinds of games. That was a little bit too much. You're suddenly given 9 cards and you got to parse all that information. I've got, oh, this card does this and this card does that. And, there's like a little bit of an information overload. And so players tended to get stuck, and the drafting process would go very, very long, much longer than I wanted it to be. And people just didn't feel satisfied. They often felt like, oh, I made a bad choice. And for a long time, I just couldn't figure out how to solve that problem. And one day at a game convention, I met with an acquaintance, a business acquaintance, and he was bored, and he was like, hey, I just got this new game. I want to play it. You want to? And it was a Seven Wonders Duel. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders is a drafting game, and then they made a version called Seven Wonders Duel that is a specific two-player game. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want to play this because I know it's a drafting game, and maybe there's something I can learn from it. So I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll play this. And I like the original Seven Wonders anyway. And Seven Wonders Duel has this very unique way, the way it does its draft. And I said, holy crap, that solves my problem. The way they're doing it is the way I need to do it for mine. So I admit I totally stole that idea from them. And not exactly, but basically what it is that instead of having the player have all the cards in their hand, what it does is that the cards are placed in rows. Some of the rows are face up and some of them are face down. Now you start from like a lower row, and it limits what cards you can pick from. So initially there's only going to be, although there's 18 cards out, there's only 3 that you can pick from, right? So it narrows down what you need to process. However, you can look ahead and see some of the cards that are coming later. So if you start to become more of an advanced player, you can sort of take that into consideration. But if you're a new player, you can just say focus like, okay, 3 cards, that's all I gotta look at. And then you pick the one that you want, and then often when you pick one, it'll flip other cards over that were not revealed, and now suddenly there's some new information. And by having some of the cards hidden, it puts both the players on a more even playing field. So if you have a player that's more advanced than another player, because there's some hidden information from both of them, it tends to close that gap a little bit. And so the point being is that I solved one of the biggest problems of my game, but just by playing other games, and then that was Seven Wonders Duel that really took my game to another level.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. A very smart mechanic because I play games in which you have to build a deck, right, or you have to draft a deck, and it can be overwhelming as a new player. The first time playing it, right, there's like all of a sudden like 10 cards on the field, and like how would I know like what's the best one if I haven't played before? And then like you mentioned, like maybe I'll get frustrated, I'll just pick one, and then I get kind of reservation because I picked probably the wrong one, and now my whole deck is kind of bad because of that, and I have to play this entire game and not with these bad cards in my deck, right? So I definitely appreciate the idea of narrowing it down to maybe just 3 choices because even as a new player, I wouldn't have to get overwhelmed by that. I could just pick whatever I feel is the best one and, go from there. So that's a cool mechanic, I would say, definitely.
Yeah, and another revelation that came in the development of the game, and again, so one of my biggest things was I wanted the game to be friendly to new players, but deep enough for more advanced players. And one of the neat little things I found was, a problem that I had was originally the win condition of the game was defeat all the cards that your other player has. Now, the other player only has 9 cards, right? You both have 9 cards, and it would seem, well, I just got to go through 9 cards. It's not so hard. Turns out that can actually be going through every single card, having to defeat every single one in the game can actually be a long process. And so games ended up being like 45 minutes to an hour, which I didn't want for this type of game. I needed it to be shorter and quicker. And I came up with this idea where, and this idea solved actually 2 problems where I assign cards a number, right? They have a number from one, they have a 1, 2, or 3 on them. And that number is a measure of about how powerful that card is. So a level 1 card is a card that's either weaker or very situational, whereas a level 3 card is a powerful card and is useful in almost every situation, right? It's almost always good. And you would think, well, when I'm drafting, so one of the things it does is it makes it easier for new players if they don't want to parse all the information on the card, they can just go by those numbers. Oh, that's a level 3. I have a choice between a level 3 and a level 1. Nah, maybe I'll go with the level 3. I want the more powerful card, right? But it is a double-edged sword because in the game, they're called Animus levels. The Animus level of the card, although it makes it more powerful, it also counts against you when it is defeated in combat. So at level 3 card, if it gets killed in combat, that's 3 points against you. Once you're at 10 points, you lose the game. So if your deck is full of level 3s, well, 3 of them get killed, you're already 9 points, you're already almost out of the game. So 3 cards out of your 9 is already costing the game. So it teaches newer players that, okay, it's easy that I can just look at these numbers. Just that single number will give me an idea of which way I should go. But also teaches them I also need to play for balance too. I can't just get all the level 3s because that may hurt me. I gotta kind of take some level 1s that even if they might be suboptimal, just because you got to keep that win condition in mind. And so that's sort of one of the many ways how I was able to give something that makes the game easier for entry level players, but also advanced players can really delve into the minutia of that and make pro gamer decisions.
That makes a lot of sense, definitely. I think that's very helpful too for these new players as well as for old players as well. You touched a bit on the cards themselves. I looked on your website too, and the drawings of the cards look really cool. The layout looks really cool. I was curious, do you have any lore behind any cards or behind your game?
Oh, definitely. I guess I didn't even mention that. It's funny because the lore kind of came after the game. So initially, I was treating the game as a kind of like a fighting. So one of the things that is a big influence to me was crossover fighting games or anything that's crossover. And what I mean by that is stuff that has characters from different franchises all together in one thing that they normally shouldn't be. So you got like the Avengers movies, right? You got all these superhero characters from different movies all in one. I was a big fan of the Marvel versus Capcom fighting games, Super Smash Brothers. You know, you got all these characters from different things. So I wanted to do something like that. And I approached it as if I could only make one game in my lifetime, if I get to only do one, what's going to be the content? So basically, I made a game where I threw all of my ideas, every character that I've ever come up with in my life, I basically threw them into one game. Then I realized, well, there's got to be a reason why. Why do I have you have a sorcerer character fighting alongside a cyberpunk, sniper? How do I make that jive? It needs to kind of make sense. So and so that's when I came up with the idea of, well, this is a multiverse, right? You're dealing with characters from different worlds, time periods, and the lore of the game is kind of a simple one. It's like many fighting games. It's more of just an excuse of just a reason to have all these crazy characters together. But in it is what it is. There's sort of this MacGuffin. There's something called a singularity, right? It's a point in space and time that is sort of like it binds reality together between different worlds, dimensions, time periods, and all that. And there's powerful entities in the game which the players play as. Some of them are good, some of them are evil. Well, the evil ones, they wanted to harness the power of the singularity for themselves, but there's a built-in mechanism to it that when you tamper with it, it destroys itself to keep it from any one person. But what this did was it made the universe or the multiverse go into disarray. And so these entities are basically trying to gather the different aspects of this power because it's been spread across the multiverse. They want to gather this power for themselves, and they're calling upon all these warriors and all that from different time periods and stuff like that to battle for them. And that's basically it. But every single card in the game, like I mentioned, that they're a unique character, they all have their own little lore. So you're gonna look when you look on a given card, you can see there's flavor text, and it gives you a very, very little snippet of their character. Like one guy who's probably going to be the cover of the game, Zen, it tells you something to the effect of, he was a great hero from his home planet, but he came up with this plan to side with these evil aliens that were attacking his planet. Now what he was trying to do was destroy them from within, but his plan backfired, and now all his friends consider him an enemy. And that's a lot of words, but I wrote a very similar, but it gives you a glimpse like of what the character is. Like, oh, this guy's like a misunderstood hero. Everybody thinks he's a villain, but he's actually tried something, but it failed. I'm a big fan of stuff like another inspiration is Overwatch, the Overwatch game, and I love how there's a lot of thought put into the characters. They're not just some guy thrown there. It's not just Joe with a machine gun, that's Soldier 76, and he's got a story to him, and maybe you care about it, maybe you're not, but somebody or some characters in the game you're gonna like. And so I wanted to give every single character something about them that was interesting. They're not just sword fighter number 2. There's Fade Black Raven, the fearless warrior that fights to prove himself. You know what I mean? And I think that lends a little bit more weight to it, because again, it is a somewhat light game. It's a medium light game, and so having like some kind of attachment to the characters adds a lot more to the game. When your character gets killed in combat, it's not, oh, my warrior went down. It's like, oh, again, Fade Black Raven, oh, he just got defeated in combat. What are we gonna do? Oh, Brick, the powerhouse football player, is gonna jump in to take up the slack. So there's like, it lends more theme to it rather than just being a set of mechanics that you're just going through the motions.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool to hear. I mean, definitely for me, one big thing is like, I would like to connect with the game if I can, and I can definitely do that through the characters, right? So lots of my friends, for example, when we play Yu-Gi-Oh, I have one friend that especially likes to build decks based on like the characters or the theme of the cards, right? So he'll purposely choose cards that maybe aren't the most competitive just because they look cool or they have a cool color or they have a cool, backstory kind of to them, right? Based on
I
whatever's
used to do that,
published.
yeah.
Yeah, so can definitely resonate well with that idea. And that's cool to hear that your game has, well thought out lore as well too. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, the funny thing is that not all of it is really well written out yet. But on the website we have a whole section that's still in construction, but I'm gonna have like I'm gonna try to put as much of the lore out there for the players to kind of just delve into. Um, just because I just think it's fun and I think it adds just a lot and it gives people something to just kind of chat and speculate about. I love speculating about stuff and lore, especially if not all the pieces are spelled out to you, and that's how it is in this game. In this game, not everything's spelled out. You're just giving little snippets of all little things. Like that one character that I mentioned, Brick, the powerhouse football player guy. He's part of something. He's part of a group called the Monster Kids, right? And the card mentioned that. He's like, oh, he's the powerhouse guy, and he's with a team called the Monster Kids. And it's like, well, what's the Monster Kids? I want to know more about that. So throwing little things like that, little breadcrumbs, I think is interesting and it's fun for players. And again, it gives the player choice in the sense of like, if you're a player that you're just all about the mechanics, well, you don't care about the lore, so you have the choice to just ignore it, whatever. It doesn't affect the mechanics of thing. And then you have the players that matters to them, like, oh, well, I want to know what is this Monster Kids thing about. And then if they search through the other cards, they'll see that mentioned again. Oh, there's another kid that says he's part of the Monster Kids. And so the player that takes the time to look through all the cards and see the flavor text can sort of piece together some kind of story that connects the characters. So it's kind of more of like an Easter egg thing. I wanted to reward the players that take that little extra time to delve into the lore a little bit. Like, hey, look, there's some little nuggets of information here for you too.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. No, I can tell that you've been, spending lots of time and, thought process on this, and that's great to hear in any game. You mentioned that, you've been spending around like 20 years on this game. I'm sure, part of it just being research and thinking about it. So I was kind of curious as, is this your first game or have you worked on other games before too?
Well, no, not my first game. I've worked on a number of personal projects, some of them self-published and then retracted and all that. I used to work for a company called Griggling Games, and although I wasn't technically a designer, I assisted in a lot of the game design and play testing and all that. Um, uh, Probably the most notable game that came out of all of that is the Quartermaster General series, which is a really nice World War II game that that can appeal to fans of people that aren't necessarily fans of World War II, but want to try something like that. It appeals to that, and it like on the surface it looks like a like some of those old uh, heavy war games like Axis and Allies, but it's not like them. It's a very light, not light. It's a very sort of quick playing game with not a tremendous amount of rules. So it's very easy to pick up and play. But it gives a World War II type of game for people that want that without having to like commit to like a big huge war game like Axis and Allies. Anyway, that was probably the biggest thing that I did outside of that. And then I was working on a number of separate projects and felt myself getting spread too thin, and ended up at a certain point, I don't remember when, but at a certain point I decided to just consolidate. And I said, look, you know what, I'm going to go back to my original idea. If I can only make one game, if of these many little projects that I have cooking, if one of them could be, if I only had, if I could make a genie wish and say, hey, one of your games will be the one that everything else will fail, but you can pick one that's going to be a success at. So I picked Animus, and the advantage was also that because I'm doing this whole multiverse thing, I could incorporate ideas from all these other games that I had and just throw them all into like a big melting pot. Oh, this, you know, like the Monster Kids characters, like there's a team of them. That was a whole game. There was a game that I had worked on called Monster Kids, that I still may do. But I said, you know what? I may never get to do that. Well, you know what? I'm going to take those characters and I'm going to throw them in here anyway. And so it gave me the ability to just do a little bit of everything that I wanted to do, but consolidate it all into one game, which is something I kind of recommend to other game designers too, is try to pick one, yeah, work on other stuff, but pick one thing as like, this is your, hopefully your magnum opus, and, you know, just try to put as much of it as you can into it, especially if you're new as a game designer. It is so much more important to get one game done rather than 10, right? Because you could be 50% done with 10 games, but that doesn't give you any kind of real sense of accomplishment. But you do one game, take it all the way to completion. You've done the cards, you've done the mechanics, you've done everything. You've maybe gone so far as design a rule book, design a box, and all that. And when it's done, regardless what happens with it after that, you have that personal success. You did this thing, and now you know that you can do this. Right? You can make a game, and you can take it all the way to completion. And then there's always lessons learned that you're going to take from there into further projects. And that's how it was for me. I did a lot of small little stuff to completion that weren't very good games, but they were completed games. And it just taught me that valuable lesson. Like, yeah, I can take something from an idea, you know, an idea that's just in the cloud, and focus it into something concrete.
That's really cool to hear. I mean, I think a lot of people have ideas, right? But it's different, of course, to have an idea and to just kind of tinker with it than to actually have a, you know, an actual, real, tangible game out there. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's, you know, even if it's not the best game out there, I think you have that. You definitely deserve to be proud about creating something, right? Because most people, they just dream about doing that, but maybe they get busy or they just forget about it, but they just don't do it, right? So to have that accomplishment is definitely something powerful, and then that can, of course, you know, inspire you to keep on making better and better games too. So
Yeah.
that's great to hear.
Well, and it's also, I think it's important to, for game designers to have an honest goal, or know for themselves what exactly it is they wish to accomplish. Like, are you just making a game for you and your friends to play? There's nothing wrong with that. Not every game needs to go up to a publisher. Or do you want, is that where you want to go? Do you want a game that's going to be out to a publisher? So you have to be very realistic, or very real with yourself, what it is that you're hoping to accomplish, and then go for that. Someone that I know, actually the owner of the Game Crafter, JT Smith, he was talking about once how he, you know, he's made several games, but at this one convention, he brought out this game for playtesting, and it was this very large, expansive game with lots of economic, you know, number crunching, right? All this stuff. And, you know, the playtesters were all like, oh, this is too much. You know, that was the feedback they were giving them. Technically, rightly so, like, oh, there's too much information. You'll never go to market with this. There's too much info and all that. And then he realized that what he forgot to tell them before the play started was, hey, by the way, I'm not making this game for production. This game is gonna be for 5 specific people in the world. My close friends that I know will like this specific type of game. They want this kind of number crunching, and all I'm doing here is making sure the math bears out. um and that's fine. He was making a game that was literally for a specific audience of like 5 people. And so having your honest goal for yourself like that will help guide you to where you want to go. Maybe you do want to get published, so now that's a whole other path that you got to take. You got to research that. Well, how do you get in front of publishers? What are the different requirements for different publishers? Things like that. Maybe you don't want to do that. I just want to make a game that my friends are like, well, talk to your friends, ask them what do they like. But once you have your initial, like, where do you want to go with this, that will help inform, just what the next steps are going to be.
Definitely. Yeah. So what are the next steps then for your game? Do you want to launch on Kickstarter, or what's your plan?
Yes, it's definitely going to be a Kickstarter long. It's just been it's been a long road. I did, about 2 years ago, I did a soft launch of the game, just on, like, on the Game Crafter, and it did pretty well. But I wasn't 100% happy with what I put out there. I thought it could be better. And so I went back to work on it, in addition to working on, like, future expansions and stuff like that. Because in addition to the soft launch, I basically spent about 2 years test marketing it, going to different conventions and playing it with people, and it did extremely well just about everywhere I went, to a point that I felt so confident about the game that I was okay greenlighting the development of more sets, even though the first one wasn't even really published yet. And so what we have now is the very first set is like the culmination of all the best things that I've come up with, and not exactly, but a lot of great stuff. I had to reserve some stuff for the other sets, but yeah. So the first official set is coming to Kickstarter. It was actually going to be in June, but with the coronavirus outbreak and all that, I've pushed it back. It's going to be a little bit later in the year. The date of, unfortunately, is not set in stone yet. I'm looking at tentatively. Don't hold me to this. It's probably going to be August 12th. But again, depending on how the pandemic goes, it may be sooner, maybe later. We don't know. That's global current events are gonna kind of really affect that. But it's definitely coming to Kickstarter. That is for sure. And I'm encouraging people that want to keep up with the Kickstarter and be in the know. The easiest way is for them to go to the website. It's www.animuscardgame.com. And right from any page, you can sign up for and be on an email list. We don't send out newsletters or anything like that. It's literally, you're going to be contacted probably once, and that's just when the Kickstarter is going to go live. Or unless something major, that's the only time we're going to email people. But it's, there are going to be like early bird discounts for, the first people to, back the Kickstarter. So for people that are interested, that is the best way to know what's going to happen. But yep, it's coming to Kickstarter. In the meantime, because of the global in the meantime, besides the global pandemic, you don't need to edit that out. Besides the global pandemic, because a lot of people are quarantining, including myself. I've been stuck in my house for like several days already, only going out for the essentials. A lot of game companies, including myself, have been thinking about what can we do for gamers that are shut in this time of crisis. Everybody's nervous. Like, I'm scared myself. It's a very scary time. How can we make things better for each other? We're a close-knit community. We got to look out for each other. We only have each other on this blue little ball flying through space. So what I did was, there was a special thing I was saving for when the Kickstarter launches, but I'm putting it out now because I think just, some people may find enjoyment out of it. We made a very, very cool version of the game on Tabletop Simulator. So you can play the game there. It's got some really awesome special effects and scripting and all that. So, like, it's actually kind of nicer than the physical card game. And I ended up putting it on Tabletop Simulator right now for free for anyone that, if you have Tabletop Simulator, you can play it for free. And it's everything. It's not all the sets. It's the one core set that's going to go on Kickstarter this year. I basically put the whole thing on Tabletop Simulator. And even if it hurts my Kickstarter later, I think it's a little bit more important to do just something good for my fellow gamers. And I mean, it sort of does help me because if somebody finds some kind of problem with one of the cards or something like that, I'll be able to take that information and then go back and improve the game. But at this point, the game has gone through thousands and thousands of play tests, over the last decade. So I think we got everything. So I don't think there's really much play testing to be done. But I'm not closed-minded. But yeah, that's something that is available that people can go on Tabletop Simulator, look up the Animus card game, and they'll be able to play it on there. So
Nice.
my gift to the community.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really neat. I mean, I'll definitely check that out too. And yeah, it's a great way to get the word out there too. I'm sure, right? People that are playing the game and giving you their feedback and enjoying it too, right? So that's really cool to hear.
I'm hoping on that, but honestly, one of the driving forces for me in creating this game was, and this is going to be a little bit morbid, is I wanted to, when I'm gone from this earth, I don't know if coronavirus might get me and gone, but I want to leave something behind that people find cool. I just want to leave a cool thing, one cool thing behind that other people will enjoy long after I'm gone or whatever. And for me, success isn't sales, although sales can be can be a measure. For me, success is seeing people playing my game and having fun. And if that means, I don't make much money off of it and I just throw it out there for free, but people have fun, that fulfills me. That makes me feel good. That is the success that I want. I want fans. I want people to play my game and just have fun and enjoy it. But we live in a materialistic world. You got to make money, so I can't just fund it and make a physical version and throw it out there. I got to be able to raise funds and all that. If I didn't really actually want to go to Kickstarter, but it seems like it's just the best way to go, to basically make this a reality. So that's where we're at. But yeah, for me, the personal success is people playing and having fun, and I'm able to do that at least now in some way by putting out Tabletop Simulator. So I just hope I bring a little bit of fun for people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Ed. I definitely appreciate learning more about your game, and it's exciting to hear more about the background behind it, and excited to play on tabletop too, and eventually once it's on Kickstarter to back that as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll get together outside the interview. I'll teach you the game. We'll play online.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Ed.